institution for higher education and research work in Republic of Serbia, which educate people in the field of security. For me personally, this event is very important, since I'm representing the Republic of Serbia within the technical committee of International Organization for Standardization, which is famous for developing international standard in the field of emergency, disaster management, community and public resilience, as well as new technologies related to these standards. Now I would like to invite my younger colleague, PhD student Vladimir Ninković, to present the paper titled Disaster Management in Smart Settlement Resilience Approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, I don't have much time, so I will keep everything very brief. We have one very theoretical, very conceptual presentation in which we will talk something about the very concept of resilience compared to security, and also we will show you how we applied the concept of resilience on the topic of disaster management. How we tried to link approaches of resilience paradigm with the security, human security and risk assessment paradigm. So first, a few words about the resilience. We heard it mentioned several times, especially by our colleagues from the Faculty of Architecture today, who spoke also about the urban resilience. However, resilience, it needs to be said that resilience is itself opposed to security. Whereas we regard security as a preventative paradigm, we want to prevent something to happen. We want to assess all the risks and threats in order to minimize the possibility of an event to happen. We start with the assumption, we talk about resilience, that such disruption, such negative event will take place. And we do not really think too much about what can cause it. We just want to see how we can react if something, or better said, when something happens. Because here we start with the presumption that it will happen. One of the definitions of resilience is that it is a capacity of a system to absorb disturbance, undergo change, and retain the same essential functions, structure, identity, and feedbacks, whereas the systems in question reorganize in the absence of direction. So there, in the resilience theory, there are basically two approaches. One is more engineering approach, and this one is more of an ecological approach, where we talk about adapting to the new circumstances. So not only we want our system, whether it is an organization, an institution, or a community or an urban settlement, want to bounce back. But bounce back to what? There will be inevitably new circumstances to which this resilient system needs to adapt to. Community disaster resilience is a more narrow definition which defines resilience as a capacity or ability of a community to anticipate, prepare for, respond to, and recover quickly from impacts of disaster. The author of this definition of this paper also identified 5 areas of capital. We can call them resilience dimensions if we want. Or they're very similar to the human security dimensions. They are economic, human, physical, social, economic, human, physical, and natural capital in line with which we want to organize our resilience capacities. And also, Australian National Strategy for Disaster Resilience 5 years ago defined a disaster resilient community as one that works together to understand and manage the risks that it confronts. Disaster resilience is the collective responsibility of all sectors of society, including all levels of government, business, the non-government sector, and individuals. So with this, connected with this, we need to say that resilience is rather a bottom-up approach. That we start with the lowest level, with the lowest levels. Let's say we start with a novel population, how they will respond to a disaster, how they will respond to an adverse event. So we don't really speak about what we will do to help them. No, but what knowledges, what ideas they need to have, what resources they need to have in order to reorganize themselves if and when something happens. So basically, here we have the resilience evaluation curve, where we compared two systems. With green, full line is marked a highly resilient system, whereas with a red dotted line is marked lowly resilient system. And here we have on the horizontal axis we have time, and on the vertical axis we have operational efficiency. And we can see here that highly resilient system actually has a shorter recovery period and suffers lower impacts on its efficiency. Also, we have identified some periods, some phases of the responses. T0 is the accident start, and from T0 to T1 is called what we call the predictive resilience phase. So basically, the systems which can sense that something will happen, that can predict that something will happen, will perform better. Then we come to the next phase, which we call absorptive resilience phase, where we need to absorb the impact of an adverse event. And then when we reach the lowest point, then we start bouncing back slowly. First through adaptive resilience phase, and then with the restorative resilience phase. Also, it is not necessary to set the pre-event operational efficiency level as our wanted level after the event, as the level that we want to achieve after the restoration efforts. We can set the bar higher or lower. We need to adapt to the new circumstances. So yeah, normally when we talk about resilience, we mention their dimensions. We saw that some authors, they like to use human security dimensions, and we think it makes sense when we speak about community resilience or disaster resilience. Then we have capacities which are linked to the phases in the response, and then on the lower level of the hierarchy there are resilience features which in more detail describe the capacities. So what was our idea in using the resilience approach for disaster management? We wanted to combine it with the security approach, with human security and risk assessment approach, so that we could identify variables or indicators in both proactive and with resilience on a reactive phase, and that we used in this system dynamics diagram, stocks and flows diagram, where we with stocks and flows we have marked system that undergoes disaster, and here we have some indicators, some variables that influence the response of the system. Some of these indicators are, as I said, linked to the resilience, and some are linked to the proactive phase, that is to the risk assessment and human security assessment. So I said that resilience is a bottom-up approach, and we need to actually empower the people to react better during and after the adverse event, whether it is a disaster or a smaller incident. Of course, another resilience facilitating tool maybe is urban planning, for sure, and I will not speak a lot about this because many of you know much more about this than me. So, but one aspect needs to be stressed, that not only that the most vulnerable population live in urban settlements, and they mostly will not live in the smart settlements, they live in informal settlements. And these people will suffer the most after the adverse event. So can we use, there is an open question, can we use urban planning to address the problems of the people who live in the informal settlements? And of course, we're not the first ones who are thinking in this direction. There are a number of international and EU-based initiatives that deal with using the resilience approach in addressing disaster management, in addressing the issues of urban settlements, of city resilience. I just mentioned the city resilience framework by Rockefeller Foundation and our consulting company, and some Horizon 2020 projects like Smart Mature Resilience, which aims to create resilience management guidelines, as well as for the city resilience, as well as a resident project, which also aims to develop guidelines, but just restricted to the urban transport environment, which is one of the critical functions of every city. So let's just sum this up. Say that through the idea of resilience, we express a world that is increasingly complex, but also contingent, especially in the wake of the climate change, more dramatic and high-impact disasters. But not only that, through, as I said, the threats when we talk about resilience are not so important because we want to address all threats. So it is basically an all-hazard approach. So apart from these, from natural threats, we will also want to our city, our urban settlement to be resilient to man-made disasters. Resilience is an approach that therefore may be beneficial in the activities of planning, design and management of urban settlements, particularly for the sake of sustainable development and more efficient management in disasters and emergency situations. Much more about this you can read in our paper. Thank you very much.
Thank you.